Good morning, Mobile, and all of our friends across the Gulf Coast. We're so glad you joined in for what we now know to be episode 18 of our Echo Stop Live podcast. Well, we've been here. I'm Kevin with you again on a Friday morning at 8:30, and my good friend Curtis sitting over here to my left. Curtis, I got a surprise for you.
What you got for me, bud?
I know I'm gonna have to break this to you slow, but I think we finally did it.
Why you gotta break it to me slow?
We finally did it. We have absolutely found an amazing person to join us to have a real conversation that is probably on the same understanding we are, that it's not about politics, it's not about what we think somebody wants to hear, but actually have a true heart-to-heart conversation about what we can do to make this community better.
But not taken away from all these other great guests we've had, right?
No. I was talking today, Friday at 8:30. I'm very specific, but without further ado, I wanted to introduce to our viewers a good friend and a great captain here with the City of Mobile Police Department, Lee Laffitte. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you.
You are
Thanks,
here. Tell us first where you're located at and kind of what your responsibilities are.
Well, we were at 850 Virginia. We moved off DIP. We're at 2601 DIP Suite D, but you can't miss it because you got this big police building out there and it says Mobile Police. So it doesn't matter the suite or anything.
It's very visible.
Yeah.
Well, you picked a good week to come here because I got to raise this question. We've had something happen recently in the city of Memphis.
Absolutely.
That casts a tremendous cloud of just disbelief, really.
Absolutely.
On not just the community of Memphis, but communities all across this country that are working hard every day to build relationships between police and the citizens they serve. And I'm underlying and triple scoring the word serve in that statement. And then here we have this. So I want to ask you guys just to comment for a minute. And Captain Laffitte, I'll let you comment here first if you want. But I just want to throw this out to you, and I want to throw this out to our viewers because I think we get caught up in something that's not as old as the real issue. And when I say that is like we get caught up in the politics of the conversation of why these things happen. And I want to go further back. I want to go back. I want to go back to the beginning of time, and to even refer people to Bible verses in Matthew or other places where you can find things where it talks about the least of these, and to really score or underscore that we're not talking about a police community relation. We're talking about humanity, right? We're talking about the value of a person,
of human
and,
life,
and we have to go back that far to really have this conversation. So just you spent a career in law enforcement. What do you say in this situation?
When I look at that, and I watched all 66 minutes of, I guess, the video that Memphis PD released, and what I saw was just a indifference to human life. It felt to me there were no police tactics in that situation. The initial stop, the genesis, the stop was, how they just came and yanked them out of the vehicle. That part I had was terrible. What was even more terrible that the young man didn't throw a punch or anything. It was more of that they had an agenda, and they wanted to complete their agenda. That has nothing to do with policing. The tactics, the chief said something yesterday. The tactics have, in my 22-year career with the Mobile Police Department, I have never seen any of the tactics that those gentlemen use. I've never seen. Yeah. I've never implemented them. I've never seen officers implement them. And and it was just baffled. I was just baffled by it.
And Lee, you know, I would say this is that oftentimes people find themselves wanting to take what happened in one city and immediately draw conclusions in another city and start to identify or try to identify similarities. And, you know, one of the things that you guys do as precinct commanders is making sure that those things that we saw in Memphis are not replicated here.
I mean, let me ask you this too, because what we're really talking about is it was very just the viewing of it, forgetting the tactics even, which I mean I think we'd all agree. Yeah. One, we'd all disapprove that you know, this is what happened, but it was very punitive. Yeah. Law enforcement's job is not to punish.
No, absolutely. You know, what I also seen there was a lack of, you know, no one policed the police. That was another issue that I had that I thought was just terrible.
A lack of empathy.
Absolutely. None whatsoever. And that's one of the things we try to, you know, I try to stress to my guys. I try to stress to the leadership and, you know, make sure that they are passing that down. And but to be honest with you, you have to talk to your guys. One of the things I sent out in a newsletter in my email, my weekly email, I just told my guys just to have a discussion about the situation, about what occurred in Memphis. Just talk to your people about it and understand that what's important is, you know, obviously the tactics were none and void, but what's more important is that we respect the public and we respect human life. Like, that was not shown there, and that was the drawback.
You said something. You said that you tasked your supervisors to talk to the guys, the troops, the ones that are out there in every day dealing with stuff, to use this as a teachable moment.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't use it as a teachable moment, then the likelihood of you actually not learning from what happened there falls on deaf ears.
He actually said a lot.
He said a lot.
Because you're teaching from teachable moments.
Right.
You're communicating amongst the troops. And if you look back, I mean, we've got video evidence of no communication or a lack thereof. Right. But more importantly, we're not afraid to have the conversation. And we've said this before on the show, whether it's talking about our faith or whatever. If we shun away from having these real conversations, how are we ever going to have a real effect on an issue?
Well, you won't grow. There's no growth if you don't have those honest conversations. So.
Yeah. And so speaking of growing and learning, you know, right before we take a break for a second, I want to ask you this. I know you are famously known for your SRP moments and bringing Sir Robert Peel into the discussion. That's but right. I mean, this goes to the core.
It does. It does. It does. We cannot forget the foundation of professional law enforcement. Sir Robert Peel brought to fruition professional law enforcement in 1829. Those principles are as solid now as they were in the 19th century. I tell people all the time that 21st century policing is really not 21st century policing. It's actually 19th century policing.
It's 21st century realization.
Right. We're bringing to fruition those things that were always important to creating a community that respected law enforcement, and law enforcement respected the community, because we are the community and the community are the police. They are tasked with communicating and working with us. And what they did in Memphis was a horrible example of how, if you want to tear down community and law enforcement relationship, that's how you do it.
Well, and it goes further than that too, because you're talking about the balance between freedom and safety. A lot of people think when you're free, you're safe. Freedom and safety are actually on the opposite ends of the spectrum. You have to give up a little bit of freedom for safety. We have to govern laws. Right. We have to follow speed limits. So we do that. Yeah. But now you're giving up a little bit of freedom for safety, and when you see episodes like that, you feel less safe than you did before, and it's a tarnish on all safety that law enforcement provides, because it takes, like you say, it takes the community and the citizens to be able to agree that they want to be governed by the government, and there has to be that relationship. And we're going to come back to you, Captain Laffitte, in just a second. We're going to take a break here for a minute, but we want to come back and we want to talk about building that relationship and how important that is in the community. To all of our viewers, by the way, we want your comments. Send us an email at echostoplive@gmail.com. That's echostoplive@gmail.com. We'd love to get your email. We'll try and ask or read one of the questions if we can during the episode. But also, anonymous tips. If you see something, say something. And here at Podcast Central here for Echo Stop Live, we always like to say, see something, say something, do something. And we've got 844-251 844-251-0644. This is an anonymous tip line. That's 844-251-0644. This is a way that you can interact with law enforcement in your community to help be part of the solution and rid our community of the problem and really come together to be one. And speaking of which, being one with the community, back in August, you mentioned the opening of the new precinct. I want our viewers to take a look at this for just a second.
It's been a long time coming. This is not only a good morning, but this is a great morning. You know, I took council seat back in 2012. There's about 3 things that the residents along the Parkway was wanting. And one thing they wanted was this police precinct. Well, guess what? On August the 9th, 2022, guess what you have? A police precinct.
You know, this is the 3rd precinct that we've opened during my administration. This is the last one that we have on the drawing board to build at this time. And all of that has been part of a strategic plan to strategically locate our precincts geographically so that they are in the right place so that they can do a better job in responding to the needs of the community. As you know, over the last several years, there's been a declining number of policemen all across the nation. We too have suffered from that, but we've only had 2 classes of incoming officers each year. Well, now with the new classroom here, we will be able to have the 3rd class of training new officers to come on board every year. Another thing is that the citizens will be able to use the classroom, for their meetings, and I would hope from a safety standpoint you feel pretty safe when you come have your community meetings here.
First of all, this is a beautiful facility. When you look at a precinct like this, what it shows to me is something that when I wake up each and every morning, what I think about, and it's placing my people in the best situation possible to succeed. Well, when you look at this precinct, our city leaders are placing us in the best situation possible to succeed, and we can't thank them anymore. Thank you.
Hey, Lee, when we think about community and law enforcement relationships, tell us, why is it important to daily strengthen police and community relationships in the city?
I'm gonna go really simplistic. We have approximately 400 officers on the Mobile Police Department. So if you do the math, that's 800 eyes that can actually observe crime and things of that nature. When you have a whole community looking at, being one, you have many more eyes than just that 400. Right. The only way to police, and I would say from its inception, is to have the community. The community is vital to safety. If you care, Kevin cares, and I care, and we're not police officers. I mean, I know we are, but we're not in this example. We have a fist that can go back and strike against the wrongdoers. But if we're separated, you care about that, you care about your side, and I care about my side, and that. If we're separated, we can't strike that blow to the wrongdoers of our community. That's the way it works. We have to band together and say we're not going to take what's occurring, and the community aspect has to do that. And that's why law enforcement. That's why I tell in my community meetings. I tell the law enforcement I tell the community all the time. The most important part is not us. Use the police department as a tool. We are a tool. We are here to execute, but you got to step to the forefront and get this and get it done along with us.
So I mean, when I think about these issues in working with the community, we said this on episode 1. Yeah. Every person has the right in their home, in their community, where they work, to feel safe. That's an inherent right, and we should be encouraging those that work alongside of us to try to do whatever we can to fulfill that right and to make them feel safe. And how do you let the community that you serve know that you hear their voice? How do you let them know that you're being heard? We know that you have concerns, and here's what we're doing to address. What are things that you can do, or that you do, as a precinct commander to let the citizens know that we hear their voice and we're addressing it, because I think a lot of the issue we talk about, not only the violent crime and the things we see nationally, but this perception issue that we're trying to improve. Like your voices are being heard. We want to hear what are things that you've seen to be successful.
Well, one is each beat officer taking ownership within that beat, understanding that this is my area. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to essentially attempt to master my craft. That's one thing. But the most important thing is just listening and talking to the community. Sometimes, I tell guys all the time, don't ride around with your windows up. I mean, how you gonna talk to the community? How you gonna know their problems if you're riding around with your windows up? You can't do that. You gotta have those windows down. You gotta get out the car. And you gotta talk to them. You gotta talk to the community. They are why we're here. We are here to provide a professional police service. And by all means, if you're going through the principles, you're gonna do it. You're gonna provide that professional police service. So I'm all about, each and every day, waking up, mastering, the craft. My craft right now, my craft is policing. So, and it's been my craft since I was 19 years old. And so, each and every day I wake up, and I'm always trying to get better. And I think as a police officer, in any profession, if you're not trying to get better, if you're not trying to help, well, you shouldn't be a police officer, in my opinion. So.
Let's unpack something real quick. We talk about all the time, every zip code matters. You're in the 05. Mm-hmm. Okay, the 05. The 05 is an area in which oftentimes when people hear that zip code, they think about crime. Mm-hmm. How important is it for officers to understand that the zip code does not define the people?
Absolutely. It does not.
In the community.
No. And you're going to hear Ms. Hightower, who's in the 05, mm-hmm. A great woman who really cares about her community later. The zip code has nothing to do with. There are many great people. What we have are just, my opinion. We got to get our education system. We have to get that up. We have 2 failing schools in the 1st precinct, and that's a big issue for me because I know education is directly related to our crime rate. But when we do those things and when we talk to the community, man, I'm telling you, we're gonna do some great things.
Let me ask you this though: how important is it for us when we think about education? How important is it for us to understand, or should we deduce that the sole responsibility of educators is only to educate and no one else? Or should we consider that to be
that's a big question that you just brought on there, because that's a whole other discussion. Yeah. I agree.
Those are things that oftentimes that puts us in silos. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That we have to bust those silos and say that it's important for us to help and support those educators in educating our kids, but hold them accountable. Yeah. In their responsibility of educating our children.
Aren't they part of the fabric of continuing to grow that relationship of trust? Like there has to be trust with law enforcement in the community. There also has to be trust with education system in our community that we send them there and they're coming back with something of value. Right. But all those people who spend time are allowing these ideas to percolate with the people that they spend time with. How about maximizing that time to have real conversations and to discuss real world issues so that we're teaching people how to resolve conflicts properly, how to associate, to find value in themselves. We've had episodes before. A lot of this just stems with people that either find themselves feeling hopeless for some reason when in fact there's really value in their life. And if we can just show them what their gifts are and point them in the right direction. I know it sounds easy and cliche to say, but that's the reality of it. God's given us all these gifts, and how do we harness that power to move forward in a positive direction and be part of something magnificent in your community rather than the reason the community is upset at something. And I feel like that's really good. We've got a question actually from one of our viewers here. So Frank has just sent in a question. He says, how can I teach my children to respect law enforcement when every time I turn on the TV, the news is showing another police brutality incident? It seems like every time. I mean, obviously, there's a lot. So first of all, thank you for sending in the question. We appreciate it. But I'm going to let the captain answer that. I mean, how do we teach the next generation of youth who will become adults to respect law enforcement in the community?
Well, I think transparency is the number one thing. We as law enforcement, we work for the community and we work for our citizens. And so we have to have more transparency. The only way to build respect is with trust. And they have to see that, look, we're trying our best to make sure that you're safe. That's why, the issue with this question, well, not the issue with the question, but his issue is when he see the thing that happened in Memphis, when he see that, police all around, and it comes from the 21st century of policing, police all around, the public looks at us as guardians. And when that trust is broken by what you saw in Memphis, it brings us all down. That's why, when I'm doing a hiring committee and I'm bringing officers into our organization, I tell them, when you put that uniform on, you're not just putting it on for yourself. You're putting it on for every police officer in this country. Wow. And that's a big,
That's pretty big. And if you want to come alongside us, one of the reasons we do this podcast every week, Fridays at 8:30, is to have an open conversation that you can participate in. But, we're trying to not only impede violence, but improve the perception. And this podcast gives us the platform to have these real conversations. But if you're on Facebook and you see us, like us, give us a thumbs up. If you're following us on YouTube as well, you're welcome to comment all across social media. The more viewers that we can drive to participate with us in this conversation is going to strengthen the team, or as the captain referred to, the force behind the strength, if you will, to fight back against these things. And we really feel like this platform allows us to do that. And we thank you for sending in questions. Again, echostoplive@gmail.com. That's echostoplive@gmail.com. And slowly we're going to wind down our episode here, but I've got the $1 million question. I know you've got probably a question or two. My question is why. So I know Captain Laffitte. We've worked together for some time.
Yeah.
And I know the kind of person you are, which doesn't amaze me because I expect that type of person to be in this line of profession, but amazes me that I've had the opportunity to actually work, even just for a small snippet of time of my life, alongside somebody who I truly value their belief system and what they stand for. But why do you do what you do?
I really do it for when I look at, when I started my career as a police officer, it was, I guess, everybody in the watch the movie Beverly Hills Cop. All right,
I've heard this story from you.
So I wanted to be Axel Foley. I'm serious, man. I wanted to be Axel Foley, but I found out when I first started my career, Axel Foley was the movies. But I started really seeing as a young man, I started seeing the importance of policing, the importance of why I do it. I do it because I love helping the community. It's a calling, and I can't really describe it. It's like when I we got a picture in the precinct of an officer just bending down tying a young man's shoe. And I felt that was like, it was just one of the most important things. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. I love to have moments like that. Now, we have the moments where, where law enforcement has to, use force or whatever. And we try to, any law enforcement officer will tell you that they don't want to, don't want to use force at all. What we want to do is just be in the community, love the community, and do our part. So, if you ask me, I know I'm long-winded here.
No,
but if you ask me,
that's a good story.
But if you ask me, it's just it's a calling. I really care about each and every one, and the reason I say that because my mom lives in Mobile, and I treat every citizen as if they're my mom or my dad or my uncle or my cousin. So, and I preach that to the young men that. That work with me.
Well, and we always talk about law enforcement, and I love the days when law enforcement was synonymous with bravery, and I still think those are the days. But we see these episodes, and people come up with other names to describe the profession. But you just said something there. You came into law enforcement. It attracted you through a somewhat humorous way, but the reality struck pretty quick.
Really quick.
And when the reality struck, you answered the call of the bravery. But what I really hear him saying, Curtis, is that he had the confidence and the belief to walk in the path that he knew he was called to. And that call to service is deep, because a lot of people tune that out. They say, well, I want to do this or I want to do that. but to truly follow in something that you know could potentially put you in harm's way, but at the same time has a service element to it, and that you have the confidence to walk into that service. I think that's where we have to get back to in law enforcement, the serve piece. Yeah, we protect, but we serve.
Right.
And I think if you get that servant mindset back into law enforcement, well, Curtis, we're tuning it down here, so I know you always get the grand opportunity to finish us off with some thoughts here. You know, I want to say it's been crazy that we've had this conversation, that we've had to have this conversation, but I feel good that we're actually talking about it.
We needed to have this conversation. I will tell you this. The media has a saying, if it does not bleed, it does not lead. Okay? What I challenge everyone to do is to challenge the perceptions that are thrust upon us, and challenge them in a way in which you do not allow it to shape your perception or your perspective. Because people will always try to shape your perception of what is and draw contrast to something that is somewhere else and bring it here, and then make us feel that we're dealing with the same issue. Can we find ourselves dealing with the same issue? Absolutely. If we're not doing what we're doing right now, we will. But challenge those perceptions, because they will, if you're not careful, shape your perspectives.
And I think as we conclude the show, I just want to remind our viewers that, you know, light always wins over darkness. And even though we have these things cast upon us, and they are horrific, and we certainly condemn, you know, that type of behavior, but at the same time, you know, what do? We keep moving forward doing what we do, because we know what we're doing is right. And the longer that those that are doing it for the right reason, in the right place, at the right time, with the right community and the right citizens, they will see the growth that we come, and that's the way we grow. So, so as we bid farewell for this one episode, I would just say thank you for being here. I know you're super
Thanks
busy.
for having me.
You're all over the place. We had a discussion earlier. I know you're always looking to grow and to learn, and I just respect that about you. And I know anybody that's watched this episode has tremendous respect for you in what you represent. You make this city look good. You make this police department look good, and we appreciate you just taking a few minutes to be with us. I would remind our viewers to tune in every Friday at 8:30 for Echo Stop Live podcast. You know, we are asking you to send us anonymous tips. If you see something, say something, do something. It's 844-251-0644. That's 844-251-0644. And you can send us emails at echostoplive@gmail.com. That's echostoplive@gmail.com. As we wind up and wish you all a great weekend, I want to remind you that the whole purpose behind Echo Stop is to not only impede violence, but to improve perception. And we would ask all of our viewers and everyone that you know to come alongside us on this journey. Together, it truly takes all of us, and we can do this. Thank you again for joining with us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday at 8:30.
All right.